From the shadowed annals of prophecy, across millennia and diverse faiths, two names echo with an almost unparalleled resonance of dread and cataclysm: Gog and Magog. These are not mere footnotes in dusty scriptures. They are central figures in the eschatological visions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, representing a climactic confrontation that has captivated and perplexed theologians, scholars, and mystics for centuries. The question that has reverberated through history is not just who or what they are, but what profound truth their legend seeks to unveil about humanity's ultimate destiny and the very fabric of cosmic order. This exploration is not merely academic. It touches upon the deepest anxieties and hopes concerning the end of ages, the triumph of good over evil, and the dawn of a prophesied new world. We embark on a journey to decode these enigmatic entities, examining their origins in sacred texts, their varied interpretations across history, and their startling relevance in understanding contemporary global events and even the hidden landscapes of the human psyche. The enigma of Gog and Magog is a tapestry woven from ancient scripture, geopolitical speculation, and profound spiritual symbolism, beckoning us to look beyond the veil. Within the Hebrew Bible, the prophecies of Ezekiel, specifically chapters 38 and 39, provide the most extensive and dramatic depiction of Gog. Here, Gog is portrayed not as a demonic entity per se, but as a human leader, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, hailing from the land of Magog. This land is consistently described as being located in the uttermost parts of the north. Ezekiel prophesies that in the latter years, Gog will assemble a colossal coalition of nations including Persia, modern Iran, Cush, often identified with Ethiopia or Sudan, and Put, Libya or parts of North Africa, alongside Gomer and Beth Togarmah, peoples associated with Anatolia or regions north of the Black Sea, to launch a massive invasion against a regathered and unsuspecting Israel. The divine purpose behind this orchestrated invasion is explicitly stated, not to punish Israel, but for God to manifest His power and holiness before all nations through Gog's spectacular defeat. The prophecy details a devastating divine intervention, God's fury unleashed, accompanied by great earthquakes, pestilence, torrential rains, hailstones, fire, and brimstone. The invading armies are to be annihilated, turning upon each other in confusion, their weapons becoming fuel for Israel for 7 years, and their bodies buried in a valley thereafter known as Hamon Gog. The sheer scale of this divine judgment aims to ensure that the nations will know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel. This biblical account establishes Gog and Magog as key antagonists in a future, divinely orchestrated conflict of immense proportions, setting a powerful precedent for their later apocalyptic roles. In Islamic eschatology, Gog and Magog, known as Ya'juj and Ma'juj, are equally formidable harbingers of the end times, or Qiyamah. The Quran presents their story, most notably in Surah Al-Kahf, the Cave, verses 18 to 94 to 98. Here, the righteous ruler Du al-Qarnayn, a figure often equated by commentators with Alexander the Great or Cyrus the Great, encounters a people who are suffering greatly from the depredations of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, described as doing great mischief on earth. They implore Du al-Qarnayn to build a barrier to protect them. Utilizing his God-given knowledge and resources, he constructs an impenetrable wall of iron blocks fused with molten copper between two mountains, effectively sealing Ya'juj and Ma'juj away. Du al-Qarnayn states that this barrier will hold until the promise of my Lord comes to pass. Then he will make it into dust, and the promise of my Lord is true. Another Quranic reference in Surah Al-Anbiya, the Prophets, verse 21 to 96, states, "Until when Ya'juj and Ma'juj are let loose, and they swiftly swarm from every mound." This verse clearly links their release to the imminent approach of the day of resurrection. Prophetic traditions, or hadith, further elaborate on Ya'juj and Ma'juj. They are described as an immensely numerous and destructive people who, after being released from behind the barrier, will consume vast resources, drink dry lakes and rivers, and spread chaos. Traditions also speak of their attempts to tunnel through or scale the barrier daily, only to find their efforts undone overnight, until the appointed time for their release. Their eventual emergence is considered one of the major signs preceding the return of Isa, Jesus, who will ultimately pray for their destruction, which Allah will bring about, often described through divinely sent worms or calamities. The Islamic narrative, while sharing the theme of a destructive horde, uniquely emphasizes their containment behind a physical barrier and their release as a definitive sign of the approaching final hour. The prophetic ambiguity surrounding Gog and Magog's identity has historically fueled a relentless quest to pinpoint them among contemporary nations and political powers. This outer interpretation often maps these figures onto geopolitical adversaries, particularly those perceived as threatening from the north or distant barbarian lands. Throughout history, various groups have been cast in this role. The Scythians, known for their incursions from Central Asia, were early candidates. Later, the Huns, Goths, Vikings, and the formidable Mongol hordes under Genghis Khan were all, at different times and by different interpreters, identified with the apocalyptic forces of Gog and Magog. The Khazars, a Turkic people who converted to Judaism and established a large empire between the Black and Caspian Seas, also featured in some medieval interpretations. As geopolitical landscapes shifted, so did the candidates. The Ottoman Turks, during their expansion into Europe, were frequently labeled as Gog and Magog. Even Napoleonic France faced such accusations. Perhaps one of the most enduring identifications, particularly within certain streams of Christian eschatology, has been with Russia. This linkage is often based on Ezekiel's description of Gog hailing from the uttermost parts of the north relative to Israel, and perceived etymological connections, however tenuous, such as Meshech with Moscow, or Tubal with Tobolsk. Consequently, events like the Cold War saw Soviet Russia widely cast as Magog. In contemporary discourse, this interpretive lens continues to be applied. For instance, some commentators analyze Russia's actions in conflicts, like the one in Ukraine, through the framework of Gog and Magog prophecies. Similarly, the persistent tensions and conflicts in the Middle East, particularly surrounding Israel and areas like Gaza, are frequently viewed by dispensationalist Christians and others as fulfilling biblical prophecies and setting the stage for the prophesied end-times battles involving Gog and Magog's assault on Israel. It is crucial to recognize these as prevailing interpretations that adapt ancient prophecy to current global events, rather than definitive identifications, highlighting a human tendency to seek prophetic relevance in unfolding history. Beyond the externalized battles on the world stage, a profound stream of interpretation views Gog and Magog not as literal nations, but as potent symbols of internal, psychological, or spiritual struggles. Kabbalistic traditions, the mystical dimension of Judaism, frequently delve into such inner meanings. From this perspective, Gog and Magog can represent the ultimate cosmic war against the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination or negative impulse within each individual and within the fabric of creation itself. This is not a war fought with swords and shields, but a profound spiritual contest for the purification of the soul and the rectification of the cosmos. The conflict symbolizes the chaotic, unrectified spiritual forces that obscure divine light and hinder the establishment of God's kingdom within the human heart and the world. Overcoming these inner Gog and Magog forces is integral to Tikkun Olam, the sacred task of repairing the world and restoring divine harmony. Similarly, from the vantage point of archetypal psychology, particularly inspired by Carl Jung, Gog and Magog can be understood as powerful archetypal symbols. They may personify the collective shadow, the repressed, denied, or destructive aspects of humanity, society, or even the individual psyche. The prophesied apocalyptic battle, then, transforms into a metaphor for the psyche's critical confrontation with its own shadow. This encounter, though fraught with crisis, is deemed necessary for achieving psychological integration, wholeness, and individuation. Jungian thought also highlights the mechanism of projection, whereby these internal demons, unresolved conflicts, or societal anxieties are often externalized and projected onto designated enemies or outgroups, mirroring the historical tendency to identify Gog and Magog with external nations. Modern esoteric systems and spiritual philosophies often interpret the Gog and Magog narrative as a metaphor for profound trials and initiatory challenges that humanity and the individual must undergo for spiritual evolution. These interpretations move beyond literal conflict to see these forces as catalysts for growth. For instance, within some contemporary esoteric circles that draw inspiration from reinterpreted ancient Egyptian or Hermetic themes, Gog and Magog might symbolize cosmic adversarial forces, or a period of intense global or personal trial, the passage through which is necessary to attain a higher state of consciousness or usher in a new spiritual aeon for humanity. Anthroposophy, the spiritual science founded by Rudolf Steiner, offers a particularly nuanced esoteric interpretation. Steiner did not view Gog and Magog as literal future nations in a simplistic sense. Instead, he identified them with specific spiritual beings or influential currents that humanity must confront for its development. These can be linked to what Steiner termed ahrimanic forces, those which promote extreme materialism, intellectual coldness, illusion, and a hardening of human consciousness and seraphic influences connected to a powerful Sunday demon figure, representing intensely destructive anti-cosmic impulses that seek to derail human evolution and sever humanity from its spiritual origins. Crucially, Steiner's perspective includes the concept often summarized as durch Gog und Magog zum Göttlichen, through Gog and Magog to the divine. This indicates that the confrontation with these challenging, adversarial spiritual influences, symbolized by Gog and Magog, serves as an essential Prüfungslaufbahn des Egos, a proving ground or trial pathway for the human ego or I consciousness. This intense battle is not merely destructive, but is integral to human and cosmic evolution. By consciously recognizing, engaging with, and ultimately overcoming these materialistic deceptions and spiritual counterforces, humanity, and each individual ego, has the opportunity to develop true spiritual insight, genuine freedom, moral strength, and a deeper, more conscious connection to the divine. It is about transforming these harrowing encounters into catalysts for profound spiritual development and heightened awareness. Our journey through the multifaceted enigma of Gog and Magog reveals a narrative far more complex than a simple prophecy of doom. We have traversed from their dramatic appearances in the ancient scriptures of the Bible and Quran, where they are depicted as formidable forces heralding cataclysmic, divinely orchestrated events at the end of days, to the persistent historical attempts to identify them with specific nations and geopolitical adversaries, a practice that continues to shape contemporary discourse. Beyond these external interpretations, we've delved into the profound inner dimensions offered by Kabbalistic thought and psychological frameworks, which recast Gog and Magog as symbols of internal spiritual battles, the collective shadow, or the unrectified aspects of the human psyche. Furthermore, modern esoteric philosophies, particularly Anthroposophy, present these forces as crucial, albeit challenging, spiritual trials necessary for human and individual evolution path through Gog and Magog to the divine. The enduring power of the Gog and Magog motif lies precisely in its profound ambiguity and its capacity to resonate across these diverse interpretative spectrums. It taps into primal human anxieties about chaos, uncontrolled power, and the potential for widespread destruction. Yet, simultaneously, it carries within it the seeds of profound hope, the promise of divine justice, the ultimate triumph of order over chaos, the purification of the world, and the potential for radical transformation, whether on a global, societal scale, or deep within the sanctum of the individual human soul. The question of Gog and Magog is not merely about predicting the future, but about understanding the enduring patterns of conflict, challenge, and the perennial human quest for meaning and redemption in the face of overwhelming forces. By consciously engaging with, understanding, and ultimately overcoming the deceptions of materialism, Ahriman, and the seductive corruptions of spiritual adversaries, Sorath, humanity, and each individual ego can develop true spiritual insight, moral strength, authentic freedom, and thereby strengthen its connection to the divine spiritual worlds. It's a vision where the engagement with darkness, if undertaken with consciousness and courage, becomes the very means by which greater light is achieved. This general esoteric theme, that such dark or chaotic forces, when understood and navigated consciously, serve a higher purpose in spiritual development, underscores a belief in a purposeful cosmos where even the most profound challenges are opportunities for growth, testing humanity's resolve, and pushing it towards greater awareness, spiritual maturity, and ultimate unity. Our journey through the multifaceted enigma of Gog and Magog has taken us from the stark prophetic pronouncements in the ancient scriptures of the Bible and Quran, through centuries of historical attempts to pinpoint these entities on the geopolitical map, to the profound inner landscapes of psychological and esoteric understanding. We have seen how these names, laden with apocalyptic portent, have been identified with marauding hordes of antiquity, with powerful empires of later ages, and even with contemporary global powers, reflecting the anxieties and conflicts of each era. This is the literal, external interpretation. A future physical conflict, a final battle involving specific nations against a perceived divine order, or its people. Yet, we also explored a deeply contrasting interpretative thread, the symbolic and internal. From this vantage, Gog and Magog are not external foes, but represent the inner demons, the selfish inclinations, the unintegrated shadows within the human psyche, or the chaotic spiritual forces that individuals and societies must confront. The battle is waged within, a struggle for spiritual purification, psychological wholeness, and the rectification of the self. Finally, we consider the developmental or transformative perspective, particularly through esoteric traditions. Here, Gog and Magog symbolize necessary trials, formidable challenges on the path of spiritual evolution. The confrontation with these adversarial forces, whether understood as materialistic deceptions or anti-cosmic impulses, becomes a crucible for forging inner strength, true freedom, and a deeper connection to the divine. A journey through Gog and Magog to the Godhead. This exploration has sought to maintain a neutral stance, presenting the breadth of these interpretations and their enduring cultural and spiritual significance, rather than endorsing any single viewpoint as exclusively true. The potency of the Gog and Magog motif, its enduring power to fascinate, to inspire fear, and to provoke deep contemplation, likely stems from its ability to tap into fundamental human anxieties about chaos, conflict, and the perceived end of an era. But simultaneously, it resonates with an equally profound human hope for divine justice, for renewal, for ultimate transformation, whether that transformation is envisioned on a global, cataclysmic scale, or within the sacred space of the individual human soul. As we stand at our own complex juncture in history, what echoes of Gog and Magog do we perceive in the world around us, and perhaps more importantly, within ourselves?